Thank you. Well, sorry for starting with some sort of technical problems, but I'm very happy that you've managed to come here. Welcome, colleagues and speakers and participants. Welcome to this breakout session titled, as you can read, 10 Reasons Why You Should Take a Job in Forestry, Changing the Public's Perception of the Forester Through Strategic Communication. Yadira from headquarters, and I will be the moderator, and I'm this session. So the purpose of this session is to explore why many people still have an outdated idea of what it means to work in forestry, and what can be the brightest to consider forestry as a viable career choice. And to do so, we will discuss the perceived barriers to forestry careers. And we will hear from inspiring and highly qualified men and women employed in the sector and brainstorm innovative and achievable strategic communication approaches that can help capture and outline the reality and societal importance of a forestry career. But before I will introduce our speakers in detail to you in the audience to really take an active part in this session, as your input will be instrumental for the outcome. And here is our first opportunity to become active. Prepared a question for you, and I kindly invite you to answer it in Slido. Your answer will then be presented in the word cloud. See, is it if you were to convince a young person to take up a job in forestry with one, what would that word be? This is quite a challenge, I know. So to be able to participate, I invite you to click on the link to Slido in the chat, or if you have your cell phone ready, to scan the QR code on the screen to open the window where you can input your answer. Once the window is open, you can type your answer in under enter a word. Please do not forget to click on send, because otherwise we will be able to see what you entered. So let's wait. This is quite a challenge after the first technical problems, a challenge to tackle. Let's wait a little while until everybody has got a chance to fill in their word. But we can already is high up, future. It's a cool job. I think we could all agree on that. So this is looking, and I think we will certainly come up with more than 10 reasons why a young person should take up a job in forestry. Because as you all know, there are many reasons why we and why have taken up such a job. Still filling in the Slido, I would also like to invite our speakers to also think about 2 or 3 reasons that they want to share with us later on after their presentation. So this is looking good, and it seems Futures is running in first place. Lots of other very good reasons and very good words that have come in. So let's wait for a little while till we see what the word cloud will look like, but it also looks very, it already looks very, very. I also like the impact there. I think that's important. Sustainable future impact. There are lots of excellent contributions. And I would like to assure you already here that all your contributions that we will also ask from the audience will be reflected in the report that we will give back to the plenary session, and it will be taken note because it's all your contributions will be very valuable for the outcome of this session. I think we should maybe now start introducing our speakers, if you agree. And I would like to introduce, first of all, our first speaker, Kerry Davies. A very warm welcome to her. Kerry is Learning and Development Manager at Forests Mondi, South Africa. She has spent the majority of her working career, more than 25 years, in the forest industry, working with skills development. She was instrumental in developing forestry qualifications at the lower levels, and more recently, the vocational qualifications in the forest industry in South Africa. So today, she will share strategies to attract the best and the brightest to work in the forest-related sector and how to keep them. So please, Kerry, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good day, everybody. So whether it's evening, middle of the day, or good morning, a warm welcome to you. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about Mondi. Mondi is an international company. We're in 38 countries, so there's various plants, sales offices, and mills. We are North America, Africa, Europe, and Asia, so just about the whole world. We are a paper, pulp, and packaging company, and our most important thing is we sustainable design. So sustainability is at the of our Mondi strategy. I've given you the website for Mondi Group if you want to view our action plan for 2030. As I've been introduced, I'm the Learning and Development Manager for South Africa. We have forestry in South Africa and in our Russian setup, and nowhere else in Mondi. So I look after my portfolio is employees, contractor employees, over 3,000 employees at this stage work in our operations, and also our feedstock, our student feedstock, and the work-based experience students that we give an opportunity to, once they finish their qualification, to get some work experience so that they can be employable. Next slide, please. So really, I've marked down 10 ways to attract the best and the brightest, and to keep them, because it's no good just attracting them to forestry, but it's also to keep them. So number one, in South Africa, forestry is a scarce skill, which means that one quality of employability is great. Secondly, we have some very good tertiary institutions that have quality education and qualifications. Thirdly, in Mondi, two diverse career paths. One is into line, and I've stated there what line means. So that's more your operational forester. And secondly, more the specialist or supportive role forester that can go into various lines in our operation. Fourthly, we have very structured development pipelines so that any individual coming into our organization, or even for us to sell it to them, we are telling them about the wonderful opportunities for their career development. And along with that is very strong succession planning with our employment equity considerations. In South Africa, it's mandatory. And so diversity is absolutely critical in our country. Sixthly, it's really the mechanization and the high-tech tools that we use, embarked on a huge drive. You'll see at the top, there's a logo there on precision forestry. So it's the human hand meets the digital hand, very, very in our operation. And also the use of laptops, tablets, that young kids today are really attracted to. Lots of donation and AI as part of our operations. I've mentioned Sustainability Action Plan for 2030. We also have very structured people development tools as well. So for our forests, we have what we call our forest learning training courses for our foresters to go through. So every single one of them is calibrated exactly the same in our organization. And they know all the do's and don'ts of that subject if they work for Mondi. And we also offer opportunity for further studies as part of our development tool. And ninthly is the continuous improvement is the very ethos of Mondi. So innovation and mobility is absolutely encouraged in our organization. And lastly, a very, very strong mentoring and coaching wing, where all young foresters come in as our feedstock are mentored and coached this whole process in paths. And also one of the most important things as well, besides employability, is also very competitive packages that are individuals. So I'm very involved in the development of youth, bringing them into the organization as part of our feedstock and keeping them there and developing them foresters. So that's me in a nutshell. Just at the bottom, I've put a little picture there of we want to be the employer of choice and we want the right fit of individuals. So there's various psychometrics that we put our students through as part of our development to ensure that they develop into a well-rounded holistic forester. So that's me in a nutshell. Very quick. I can elaborate on all these things, but I only had 3 minutes, so that's me done. Thanks, Gerda.
Thank you very much, Kerry. Thank you also for keeping the time, and thank you for this excellent overview of the skills development strategies and measures that you seem to have in place at Mondi. Now let me ask the question that I asked everybody at the beginning about reasons why any young person should pursue a career in the forest sector. And I would like to ask you to share with us 2 reasons maybe that you've come up with.
I think definitely the high-tech mechanization or machinery and tools, the LiDARs, you know, the GIS systems, all the machines that we use is a big plus. That kids can take a smartphone and be able to utilize it by using digitization that we have put in place. And then secondly, I think definitely the green economy, sustainability in all its aspects, uplifting of poverty, going into rural areas, finding your bright and your best from rural areas, and especially communities that surround our forests, so that they have a vested interest in what's going on as a neighbor. I think those are the 2 big pluses.
Thank you very much. These 2 sound very convincing to me already. So thank you, Kerry.
Pleasure.
Now, I'm very pleased now to already introduce our next speaker. I'm very happy to introduce you to Mirian Yadira Molina de Cruz. Let me briefly introduce you to her. After graduating as forestry technician in Honduras, Yadira spent 2 years working in the Honduran Forest Service. She earned a Bachelor of Physical Sciences with Environmental Science option and gained extensive professional experience in Honduras. In 2004, she founded Fundación Madera Verde. Today, she will share with us why she decided to become a forestry engineer and what challenges she has overcome as a woman working in forestry. Let me now hand the floor to Yadira. Yadira, please.
Thank you. Thank you all. And thank you for this great opportunity to share and collaborate with this great event. Yeah, there is many reasons why I chose to study forestry. But I start with how I became a forester. Being in this country, I am part of a family of 6 children. So my dad and my mom were traditional farmers. And that's the way I grew up, farming. Even though that we were always farmers, my dad and my mom decided to take us to the city and they moved. And we were had the opportunity to go to a better school, and that was their purpose. So, but every time we have a vacation, we go back to the farm. And so that's how I end up really learning about value chains. And because my dad always, sorry for the background noise. We were always like, my dad was bringing all the things from the farm to sell to the store we have in the city. So I early in my life understand how this value chains work and how important were the resources to keep them to survive for a small family of farmers like mine. So when time comes to high school, I just I want to share this the next slide, because I think for me now is going back 30 years ago when I decided to be a forester. It was not really something that I know what was it. It's really clear in my country for many of the people of that age, like high school kids, to know what is to be a farmer and agronomer, but not a forester. Especially in my country, the career is called taxonomia, which is something we don't know. The first time I heard that, I never knew what was it. So I think the best way is to have a clear picture, because by that time, I didn't have it. But I just have this, when we were at the high school, we had this meeting, and there's this team of foresters came from the forestry school and explained us what exactly was it. And now I realize that, then I realized how important it was for me to go to the forestry school. That's exactly what I wanted, because that's what I was related to. My dad, even though he was a farmer, he never really was exactly that kind of farmer. It was a small farmer, keeping always the agroforestry, always doing conservation measure, taking the soil where it was, leaving part of the parcels to rest, and the next year to find another one. So that was something that I really knew. So, but I was afraid. Let me tell you, because being that traditional farmer, my dad always had that idea that women need to study something made for women, not for men, because he said that it will be too hard for women to succeed. So I think that made me like realize that I needed to study forestry to show my dad what was real. For it doesn't need that is strength, physical strength that maybe men have more than women to succeed. So that was another reason I decided to go for the forestry school, because actually we were 6 kids, and for those 4 of my brothers had, I will say, preference on using cars, using bicycles. So I just really wanted to show my dad I can, being a girl, I can also do that thing. So I say, this is my career. I want to go to the forestry school. And another thing to study forestry that I really like it is the fact that all this year I have been able to help people from the communities. And it has to do with logging, but by all this year of experience, I have been able to set forestry enterprises with people at the communities and help them to really put money in their pockets. So help them that, that's how I grew up. Dad loved the trees. He wanted the trees to be there, but we need, and he needed to take food for us at home. So that's how I end up learning how to help people to really make income out of their resources and come back home with this money in their pockets. And that's how we decide to create this foundation, Madera Verde, and that's how we will set up this model of market approach to help people to really care of the forest, to manage the forest, but also By far now it's only wood, but we are trying to really hard to get another value out of the ecosystem services now, like restoration projects. So I think for me is why I study forestry. In some way, I didn't have, as I say here, the clear picture by then, but I want to explore it. And once I had the right information, I was able to overcome my fears. I was fearing that being a woman, I wasn't going to be able to have the physical strength to be successful. So now I know it wasn't needed. I have enough to succeed. And another reason in my country was this hard environment, this security. Oh, sorry, you just stopped me.
Yes, I'm sorry, but it's so exciting to listen to your story. And thank you very much, Yadira, for sharing these actually also very personal insights and for sharing this success story for you as a role model in your country. This is very much appreciated. But
Okay.
can I also now ask you for maybe have you also come up for reasons in addition to what you've already shared, for reasons why one should enter such a career?
Yeah, okay. I will like to highlight 3 reasons. The work with and for nature, as I said, as I was already related to, and I keep working with and for nature, and be a part of climate change solution, which for our country is really needed right now because we are a very vulnerable country. We have 2 hurricanes last time that was really destroy a lot of infrastructure and economy of our country. And also to be part of a high impact sector. I think that's the an urgency, as I write in the Slido, is an urgency to go and study forestry and to have more people working and researching in forestry sector.
Thank you so much. Now we will collect all
time.
these reasons and put them together at the end of the session. Thank you very much. Right, everybody, I think this has been very, very inspiring. But now it is a great pleasure for me to welcome our next speaker. He's Eduardo Rojas Briales. Eduardo brings 35 or more years of experience across Europe in academia, the private sector, and international organizations, having spent close to 15 years at the Polytechnic University of Valencia in Spain, and having served, as many of you will know, as Assistant Director General and Head of the Forestry Department at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, as Chair of the Collaborative Partnership on Forests, as UN Commissioner General for Expo Milano 2015, and also as co-chair of UN RED. Today, he will share his perspective on the lack of forestry students in higher education programs and what strategies could be implemented to engage them. Eduardo, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gerda, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you this afternoon, morning, evening, whatever time you are connected. If I could move to the next slide, please. Okay, the first thing we should start with is analyzing where we are. And of course, the strong urbanization process of the last decades in different levels in different regions is one of the differences to the past, and agriculture and forestry are seen frequently as an old-fashioned sectors, very especially in Africa that has huge opportunities. And also in general, we see a high attractiveness for basic sciences and also for micro than for macro scales. And there are also strong idealistic views of nature and environment, and eventually a lack of understandings of the logic of renewable resources. It could be in certain way of the elements that have changed eventually in the last generation. When I started 40 years ago studying forestry in Germany, it was still a fashion, a profession, and it changed. But in the moment, we observe as well that those universities that are able to provide really attractive studies against the general tendencies have no problem of enrollment. So it's a much more differentiated situation. Could we move to the next one, please? So how can we increase this attractiveness of the forest studies? And for sentence which is much in the line of what we just heard from Mirian is that forest is not only about forest. is in a huge and growing share about people. And we have recalled the International Year of Forest 2011 was exactly forest for people, and how, especially the tropics where we have the biggest challenge of deforestation, we observe strongly the evidence that indigenous people southward for our forests. So managing at the same time forest and people is crucial. Next one, please. Forest is also important not only in rural areas where everybody would understand, they are also very important in urban areas. And just think about the New York to the plans of the mayor of Paris and many other cities all around the world, also very strongly in Asia, to green the cities. This is a forest work, and just to see some operations in streets and so on, big opportunities for foresters, not only in rural areas. Next one, please. Or if we want to, we have also to understand the big tension that we have, big tension of the two big differences that forestry brings in, which is enormous temporally and spatial scales. I commented before that many are attracted, for example, by biotechnology, by nanotechnologies, by the small one. Forestry is exactly the opposite. It embraces huge temporally and spatial scales, but these scales are needed in order to overcome the societal challenges. If we do not be able to upscale, we will not move forward. And there are few professions that are able to cope with this big both scales. Next one, please. And a very important issue, especially in the frame that we are all committed on the SDGs, is the fact that few areas, few activities, few professions are linked practically with all SDGs. From the 1715 as substantive, from them, practically a majority, forest is strongly linked, be rural poverty, be food, be water, be climate, be of course the forest resources by itself, or either considerable or even significantly. Practically, forest is present in everything. This makes it very intersectoral, difficult to manage in different levels locally, but also from the government's perspective, but on the other side, extraordinarily attractive. If we keep the mangroves, we'll ensure not only biodiversity, tsunami protection, or important seafood for the local communities. Next one, please. And in that sense, one of the key messages from Rio +20 was exactly that we have moved enormously in the sectoral challenges. We have been able to have a vaccine of COVID in 1 year, which is a record time, but we just get stuck in the cross-cutting issues. And there, forest is important. I put just a few of them where forest is a significant part of the solution. Please, the next one. It doesn't say that it is an easy issue. And on the other hand, it's important to recall that the principle of sustainability that was brought forward by Brundtland in '87, she was inspired by forestry. It is the basic of forest science that started with the principle of sustainability in the 18th century. And that is important to bring it forward. That's why I insisted in the fact that we cannot deal renewable natural resources like forests, fisheries, or others with the same area that mining, that static resources like minerals. They are very different and they require different approaches. Next one. And forest is crucial combating climate change in many fields, be by preserving our forests, managing them sustainable, enlarging our forest area, like we can see in all these initiatives like the Great Wall, or the big afforestation in Asia, especially in China, but in many other countries, and very especially in the bioeconomy with recovering wood, renewed construction in wood with new materials that has practically insignificant carbon footprint compared with other materials, but also substitution in textiles and in many other areas. Next one, please. And in that sense, forestry combines generalist tasks, a typical concept of foresters, with high specialist ones that are applying totally innovative development, be in forest operations, be in forest resource, all the issues of inventories and remote sensing and forest stocks, in the logistics, in the construction sector, in the textile sector, developing new materials. It's really a combination of specialists and generalists that where everybody can find, of course, his or her more near field. Next one, please. And of course, as Mirian also said before, women have huge opportunity in forestry. First, due to this recognition of the social dimension where women are much better off, but also in the technological part, there is a huge opportunity also for women. They have been in the past, that's why I put this old picture, and they have much more opportunities in the future. And our rural communities will only keep vibrant and sustainable if we have also, we are able to strengthen the role of women, where forests are important resources. Just think about deep Russia. If we don't engage women in forestry, it will be impossible to keep population there. Next one, please.
Could I ask you to have a look at the time, please?
Sure. And the final message of this compilation is that if you want to know a country, be it yours or another one, really through forestry, it's much more easy to know, because you will get to the soul of the country. You will visit really places where many nationals haven't visited, and you will be able to learn the most rooted people of the country. I put just a few pictures. The next one, please. I think is the last. So what can we do else? On one hand, of course, work with the regional forest communication networks and the global networks like IFSA that have been able over more than 40 years to keep a vibrant global community of forest students. This is really incredible, to be present in social networks even more than we are today, or at least not only in our internal ones, but outside. It's very important that we reach the 16 and 17 teenagers, especially those who might have not an exposure to rural activities and to forestry, to take advantage of the International Day of Forest and other international days, to be present, to produce short videos. They are very convincing for young people, these short videos of 1 or 2 minutes. And of course, to be also aware of contribution of forestry. Few people are aware that the system that the US used on the 11th of September was the US Forest Service system for natural disaster preparedness that is used by the UN, by FAO, and the World Food Program in case of hunger emergency situation. So there are important contributions, silent contributions that forest has brought to the world that we have to be more conscious and more proud about it. Thank you, Gerda, and I hope it was a short time, but we could share our views. And of course, there's lots of work ahead. You see just this picture from Pakistan with the slopes without vegetation, a country like yours, an alpine country, or not an alpine, but a mountainous country. There's still a lot to recover forests and to bring them, especially for the benefit of the local people. And I look forward to the discussions.
Well, so do we. Thank you very much, Eduardo. Thank you also for these enlightening insights and for showing us the bigger picture and for pointing at the diversity of opportunities, but also of challenges that we're facing. But I would also like to ask you for 2 or 3 reasons why you would recommend anyone to start a career in forestry. Have you thought about this briefly?
Sure. On one hand, it's an opportunity to combine natural and social sciences in your practice with a strong evidence and scientific background, in the ability to combine. This is not very frequent, and also to combine the management of a very extended natural resources that have a strong spatial and time dimension and so on, while ensuring that the resource is kept and improved, provide resources for local people, provide biomaterials that are crucial for economy and for combating climate change, and on the other hand, for keeping and improving also the environmental services in a balanced way between urban and rural societies, which is still to be built up. So they are really, and in solidarity through the world, because we see that many challenges the forest communities are living in the world are very similar, despite different countries, continents, and development stadiums. So I think also keeping the broad perspective is important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eduardo. Thank you. Now, I'm particularly pleased to introduce our 4th speaker of today, is John Colmy, because he will bring in even more the communications aspect. John has extensive experience as an award-winning journalist, communication expert at CIFOR, and managing director at the Global Landscapes Forum, GLF. Building on his 30 years long experience in Africa, Southeast and Southeast Asia, he will share his perspective on the role and impact of communication to change perceptions and share successful examples from his experience at CIFOR and GLF. So John, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Gerda. Great to see you. Great to see Eduardo and the others. Long time. Always a pleasure. Great communication. You look no further than Eduardo, the International Year of the Forest. was one of the, and also what we did together and the Day of the Forest that really Eduardo put through for the world that helped to raise awareness. I think that was an amazing thing. I'm going to go through my 10 reasons why you should become a forester, which I've learned in communication, and I'll go through very quickly. First, and it's about awareness, and that's what I personally have spent the last 10 years, and I know all of us have here. The awareness of the need for forests and trees has never been higher than today. As forests disappear, as biodiversity disappears, as climate changes, it becomes more extreme, people all over the world know they need foresters. Never before like today. Look at the Decade on Ecosystem Restoration was just launched. FAO is one of the leaders of that with UNEP to plan to restore 350 million hectares. That's a lot of land, and that's a lot of restoration. Forestry is going to be, and trees are going to be critical to that effort. I think COVID has made us realize a lot, not only about the importance of zoonotic diseases, but also the collapse of supply chains all over the world. Businesses value forests. And when I was a forester, we talked about forestry along train lines. Now we're talking about forestry along supply chains and value chains, and Miriam had mentioned that. So businesses have definitely realized that, the importance of it. Number 5, we've lost 10 million hectares a year, according to the FAO forest assessment, between 2015 and 2020, but we also planted 5 million hectares a year. And that planting becomes more and more important. We need foresters and more than ever for that reason. And there's a shortage of foresters. I mean, there's 881 graduates in the United States in 2020, that 34,000 lawyers graduated. There's a huge opportunity for lawyers. I mean, not for lawyers, but for foresters. And that's just the United States, and I'm sure it's all over the world the same. And the other thing is the field of forestry has become so much richer. I mean, when I graduated in 1982 at University of Minnesota, we didn't talk really about climate change. We didn't talk about gender. We didn't talk about payment for environmental services. We didn't have satellite imagery and all the cool stuff they're doing there. The computer we were learning was COBOL and Fortran and really basic stuff. As Kerry mentioned so well, it's just become an amazingly interesting, engaging field today. And forestry is a great science. It's a great basis for anything you want to go into, and you'll use it all your life. I started in forestry. I ended up going into, and I did economics and I did journalism. And I used it in my journalism every year. When I was at Time magazine, they always said, okay, we got to do the environmental package. Where's John? And I got to go to all kinds of cool places as a journalist because I'd done forestry as a science. And then when journalism kind of went to Google News, I moved to C4, and I've had 10 great years as a communicator with C4. And that's, so it's a great field no matter what you go into to start off in. And also last, I think what Eduardo mentioned, the SDGs. In the old days, it would have just been SDG 15, but now we're talking about forest landscapes. Now we're talking about forestry contribution to all the SDGs, and even forest 17, and even SDG 17, which is in networking. And you can work, look at this crowd right now that we have on. Look at the multiculturalism that you have today. Look at the digital reach you have today. You can talk to your friends and other foresters anywhere in the world today. You can come to Global Landscape Forum and meet them in Peru or ever. And then look at the landscapes you can study now. It wasn't possible in 1982. Peatlands, all the parts of the decade. Peatlands, mountains, farms, dryland forest, rainforest, coastal forest, urban forest, as Eduardo said. And these are, and it's just such a rich opportunity. And last, as I put in the survey we did, it's cool. And it's never been cooler than it is today. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So the cool came from you.
Yes.
In the survey. That's good to know. Now, thank you for this enthusiastic presentation. You've now shared so many cool reasons to be active in the field of forestry and forest-related activities. Do you maybe have some thought of some more? When I asked everyone at the beginning to come up with 2 or 3, do you have 2 or 3 reasons to add on to that?
I guess from a communication standpoint, which is what I'm doing, I think there's been one objective, and Eduardo shares this, and that's why we've done what we've done. We have to raise the awareness of forests. Everything we've ever done is we constantly, and FAO does it beautifully, and that's why all of us have to do it. We can do it every day in our lives to raise awareness of the importance of forest. And at C4, that's what I tried to do. I reached out to journalists, we trained them, we work with them, and just anybody talking about forests and trees anywhere we need now. So I think that is the imperative that we all have to do. And if you just start off in forestry, you'll have the basis to do it and lead it and gain it, and spread the word. But let's all do it. And even now, just coming here to Gray, all of you guys are engaged, and we're all change agents when it comes to forests.
Thank you, John. This has been really, really great and very, very enthusiastic and inspiring. Thanks a lot. Now, after this round of introductory statements that have set the scene and that we've already learned so much, I would like to engage our speakers in a short discussion by asking them the guiding questions of this session. Just to explain, I will also invite other panelists maybe to add on a little if they wish, and ask everyone in the audience to share their answers, again, through the Slido, if possible. And after that, if there is time, we will open up to a discussion, to questions that our participants are invited to post on the chat. So I'll ask each of our panelists a question, and the audience is also invited to maybe answer this question in the Slido. Remember the Slido link that's posted in the chat, and remember also to send it once you've filled it in. So let me ask my first question to Kerry Davies again. Please allow me to direct this question to you. What elements of forestry careers should make these careers attractive to young people today? What would you say?
I think very much what John said, it's cool because of the digitization, and they can use all these smart tools and even the machinery that is used in field is all high tech. So I think very much that is a huge draw card to kids of today. It is cool. It really is cool.
That sounds great. Is there any other panelists who would like to add on a brief sentence to that?
I think I could add something in going on what Eduardo said. Another big difference today, and at least when I studied, is about the community, that we can work with communities. Forests are part of communities, and the importance of forests to communities has never been greater than it is today. And we've done research at C4 that showed that indigenous groups and others and that have rights to their forests are the best managers on earth. It's a new and interesting part of what we do today, working with communities of all kinds, indigenous groups and ranchers. We always work with ranchers, but now it's a whole nother thing. So I think that's a great reason. It's just a fascinating field today. It always was, but now it's really rich.
Thank you, John. Now, and we already see that some of our participants have actually also entered some very great answers to this first question. But as I mentioned before, all these answers will, of course, be considered when we prepare our report for the plenary tomorrow and for further activities in this direction. So my second question goes to Yadira. So I would like to ask Yadira.
Yes.
What is it that, in your view, prevents young people, especially women, from choosing forestry as a career? What is it that prevents young people from choosing such a career? So again, I invite the audience to enter their views in the Slido.
Okay, for me, as I was on my explanation, is not to have the clear picture of what is not to study forestry. It is necessary for young people to realize how wide and how broad forestry can be, and there is room for everything, and it touches many, many fields, innovation. It can be, but the most important is for me is to be part of a solution that is really an urgency at this time. And there is a really need for everyone in the world to study solutions to a career that has to do with poverty, with the climate change. And so what stops people is not to get really the whole view of the picture. And as we work in the communities, that's is a key to let people what is not, because people has a lot of things that are negative in their minds. And once you have that, you take that out so people can really think broadly. And that's, I think, what we need to emphasize, and what it is, what is not. Forestry is not only about trees and cutting trees and industry. It is about helping people. And I think that's very inspiring for young people. Now is everyone looking for how to be part of a solution. I don't know if there are more reasons, but I will say that pretty much what driven women is to believe there is a main career also. It is not. Still today it is, or even though a lot of this movement of women to study another career like a STEM career, forestry is a career for women to study, to get a wide, I say, ramifications that you can choose what you want to be. Technologies of just researcher, you want to be a practitioner, to work with rural communities, and there are many choices. That will be something to emphasize. The broad fields that you can choose within the forestry.
Thank you, Yadira. I think I also found in those entries in the slide something what a forester or a job in forestry really is about. I think this is, you know, there are so many dimensions to it and so many opportunities. I think that's also important to know for everyone, really. So, is there anyone else of our speakers who would like to add a little bit on what Yadira just said? No, I think you've said it all.
I think I said in the chat, and I think that some people wrote in their answers that they feel like it's a field for old men, which I would be one. But there's also a realization. There's a realization in C4, IUFRO, and all the forestry organizations that we need a better gender balance. It's a great opportunity for women to join forestry now. And every one of us would recognize that. And we really, this is a great time for women to join forestry.
It is. Thank you, Con.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And as you said, we in IUFRO, we're also really kind of encouraging women to join as researchers and to take up positions in IUFRO. So, but John, since you've already been talking, my next question is actually directed to you as a communications expert. And this next question is about how can we use strategic communication to change people's perception of forestry? Now that you say it's an old man's business and all that, but it's not. It has all these new and attractive things that we've just heard about. But how can communication kind of support this change of perceptions?
Well, the big thing that happened in the last 10 years was there were two changes. I'll talk about from science communication. One is we learned and we used a journalistic approach to science communication, which made it more accessible to the world. And we started then responding quickly and covering cases and covering articles, covering fires, covering droughts, covering everything from the standpoint of forest. So constantly thinking like journalists. The second thing that happened was digital. Now you can do, and forests are great. They're great for images. And that's something we couldn't do so fast. We have Instagram and we have Facebook and we have short videos and we have so much we can do with forests and the people that are in them and the biodiversity is there, and we can move it around the world very quickly. So we can do campaigns and we can do stuff that we never could have done 10 years ago at C4 when there was 1 billion people online. And now in 2 years, there'll be 75% of the world will be online. In 2030, 90% online. So, you know, communication has changed so drastically and you just have to move with it. It's fun, it's exciting, and you can respond and move things around the world faster than any time ever before. I hope that kind of gets to some kind of answer.
Sounds very good to me. Would anyone like to add something to these words? But we have lots of contributions in the Slido, as I can see.
Well, I think it'd be great to hear from Eduardo on his work at FAO and the Data Forest and what went into that and why a little bit. I think that was a huge achievement. Yes,
so you're lucky because I will now go and ask Eduardo so he can share this experience. Because actually, my question to you, Eduardo, would be, now that we heard about the importance of communications and how communication strategies have changed, also in the new tools we're using, but how far should these communication approaches be tailored to regional and local contexts? I think that's also important, isn't it?
Yes, Gerda, sure. This is crucial because despite we have grown farther together and surely TV, social media, and so on have helped there a lot, but there are still very strong differences, regional and sub-regional, national differences. So in that sense, it's very important that we use existing networks or we create, if they don't exist, the regional communicator networks that was set up globally about 7-8 years ago is where Maria is the key engine behind. Is crucial. There are other networks like the Regional Forestry Commission of FAO, which are strongly linked to those networks, and there are many others depending on the region, ministerial meetings in the Asia Pacific, educational networks, research networks, practitioners networks. I think there's a huge cooperation, for example, in the North American area of the 3 countries and so on. So I think these networks are crucial, that you avoid thinking that you have a problem in the end the neighbor country has exactly practically your own problem. The second would be adapting the agenda to the regional or sub-regional issues. It's not the same in the Pacific that it would be in Russian and the Central Asian countries. So issues of tenure, of development, of gender, of agroforestry, of non-wood forest products, and so on. They are different in different regions, and adaptation to the priorities in those given regions, to the agendas, political and social agendas, is crucial to take advantage of the opportunity. In fact, what before John commented, establishing the International Day of Forests was exactly also having the opportunity to speak about forests not only 1 year, but also every year, in a single opportunity in a coordinated way. I would just, if you allow me, there was a comment of this old male dominance, and I think we have to keep a balance. I must say that from the many conversations I had the chance in these 5.5 years leading the forestry department, the most impressive was with the gentleman that spoke a language I could not understand, which was the former Chinese Minister of Forests, exactly 10 years ago in Beijing. In a half an hour, he was an old man about to retirement. He tried to bring me the wealth of experience of the restoration and the changing also in tenure in China in half an hour with a translator that had to combine the time. It is really impressive. And I think we have also to understand that in having such an activity that is so long-term, that is so intergenerational, we have also to see the value of the wisdom of all people, could be also female, because we cannot do a disruptive history. This is really like a big boat that cannot turn a few degrees in the moment. It cannot make a big turn. And keeping this understanding, this humbleness, that we're just a part of the chain, and we have to really take advantage of the wisdom of the elderly people. I think this is also important in this profession.
Thank you. No, this is excellent, and I think it's, yeah, you have to also look into local contexts, but contexts and regional contexts always, but always also strike this balance that you've just mentioned. So not just say, okay, it's male dominated, or that we have these issues here. I think it seems in the Slido of people who say that it could also be a danger for women to be in forestry. I think this is something that also needs to be addressed on the regional level. And I also heard like a colleague at IUFRO saying, why do we discuss education? There are so many people going into forestry and careers anyway in Europe, in Germany maybe. So I think we really have to tackle this in a very local context. So thank you very much, Eduardo, for pointing this out. I would now like to invite everyone to maybe post a question or two in the chat. And while you're doing that, I would have one extra question, if you allow me, for Kerry, because I would really like to know, if that's okay for you. What are the challenges that you encounter at Mondi when you look for qualified staff?
I think in South Africa, the big issue in forestry is that the learners that the majority of kids that are going to university, basically it's a spray and pray approach to which course they're going to get into. And they almost get into forestry by default, although they might have applied to do engineering. And some of them learn to love it. So it's important for me to ensure that the learners, before they even get into forestry, understand what they're getting into. And that's one of the reasons why we make sure that they go in field before we even send them to university. So once they're selected as part of our feedstock, is that they actually get the touch and the feel of forestry and have mentors helping them through that before they even get to university. So I think it's a huge challenge in South Africa. And this communication, educating the people out there, especially in the rural areas, more about forestry and attracting the best and the brightest is so important for us here. It really is.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Well, I would like to open up the discussion a little to the audience. We're running a bit behind time, but this is due to the technical hiccups we had at the beginning. But maybe if you have a question, put it in the chat, and maybe also let me know to whom the question is addressed. So let me see if maybe there is already a question. I cannot really find one yet. Well, maybe there's a question about universities. It's directed to the entire panel, but maybe most suitable for Eduardo, I don't know. It says, many universities, especially in the West, are changing forestry degree programs and making them broader to attract students. What is the opinion of making forestry broader, I suppose, to environmental studies, biology? And I would personally, I open it to the panel, but I guess that it's probably Eduardo's call.
Well, it depends how you do it and how strategic you do it. I mean, short-term approaches do not yield in this long-term business. If you combine it with, in the sense to also follow the specialist kind of forester that we also need, for example, with remote sensing. Perfect, there's a big demand in this area with technological issues that we have to develop machines for steep slopes and so on, not only for even boreal forest. If you combine it with sociology in order to deal better with the social issues that everybody has commented or with law regarding tenure, I mean, there are many opportunities. If you just dilute it without a strategic perspective and just turn it into a descriptive business, therefore there are other professions. And I think but what is clear in forest is this big spatial and temporary dimension, and the fact that it is an interdisciplinary discipline that is able to cope with this kind of issue. In the moment we get an active and a practical, if we get just a description issue, that is a basic science and it's not forest. So it's an issue of how we take the advantage, and we don't just dilute in order to be more fashionable or put a nicer name, despite there are also some experiences. I think this is an important issue. And I was just wanting, if you allow me to take the opportunity, on an important issue, especially focusing on Africa. There's normally always the continent that lags behind, and where I think we have the biggest gap of foresters in this moment compared from the needs and the availability is what humanity is investing today in renewable energies is incredible. But which is the first renewable energy that we have? It's forest-based, it's firewood. And no one is researching it. There is no investment. It's not interesting. The donors, it's not interested research community. And for many decades, still rural communities in Africa and even in cities will still cook with firewood. So we have to be very vocal to say, people, this is the reality. We have to do it more sustainable, not neglect this. More sustainable, more modern. In the future, we might solve it. I'm not sure that solar is going to give so much energy in cheap that we can solve this cooking issue and the cultural issue. But at the end, we have to cope the next 2 decades with this issue. So we have also to do some effort to bring light to the issues that are really on stake, and and eventually we have been very weak in managing the agenda. There have been others very efficient in managing the agenda, and we have been behind. But you will not gain a tennis competition, but just being passive, trying to stop the balls that are coming. You have to be proactive, bringing the balls forward. And I think only payment of environmental services has been one of the first times that forest sector has been able to shape the agenda in recent times. But we have to bring the issues that we have really forward. And I think the firewood issue is a typical issue where we have today still double of energy of firewood than the other renewables together, and no attention.
Okay, thank you, Eduardo. I think I can take one last question, or it's more of a comment. There's some, it reads that somebody sees the biggest challenge for the forest profession in competing storylines to the foresters' stories, at least in the central and northern regions. So there are so many other storylines, the climate change and biodiversity. And maybe this is a question more directed to John. How does the forestry fit into this picture? How can we get our stories across?
I think, and that is what I was saying about taking a journalistic approach. We have to fit forestry into every storyline. Every single storyline there is, every one you've just mentioned, we've got to have forests and trees there. And I think I can't imagine a storyline involving the environment now that doesn't involve forests or trees. So I guess that would be my answer.
Yeah, to be inclusive and not have this division between this is forestry and this is climate and this is biodiversity. That's obvious. Thank you. I think as far as I can see here, there is, or at least I cannot see any further questions. So I think it's time maybe to wrap up a little and come back to the 10 reasons that have given our session the title. So our speakers, as we realized, have given also about 10 reasons throughout their presentations, 10 reasons on why young people should consider a career in forestry. And I think maybe we can share these 10 reasons on the screen if that's possible, because once we do that, we would like our audience again to help us in the Slido to try and rank these reasons. Of course, these are different for each and every one and for regional context, local context, but maybe we could get a ranking of these reasons. And so I would like you again to go to Slido, to click on the link in the chat or scan the QR code as you've done. And there you'll find these 10 reasons. And to rank them, please click on them, starting from the one you think is most important to the least important. And once you're finished, of course, again, do not forget to click send to ensure your answers are considered. And I let you, well, a couple of minutes, I think we'll wait until this is exercise is done. So we'll see then what, at least amongst our audience, what is considered as top priority. Also, maybe with a view to a communications campaign or communications to change perceptions. And as mentioned before, all your feedback is important and will provide the basis for future recommendations around this topic. So I think this will probably take a little time. So as far as we can see from here, promoting this, oh, we cannot see it all. At least I cannot. But maybe it's too early. I'll leave you some more time. I think things are changing. It's too early to see. Because these 10 reasons, and there are probably more than 10, but these are kind of the gist out of what we've been discussing and what could be used also for communications. So let's see when we have finished. I think there's still some movement on. Okay, so if you think we're ready, let us just have a look together at what we've come up with and if we agree with this. So the number one reason, it seems right now, is to work with and for nature. And together, of course, with that is with a special view to forestry, it's to contribute to the sustainable management of forests. But it's quite good to see also that number 3 already is work together with communities and stakeholders worldwide. So this is, I think, this is quite important, that a job in forestry is not the traditional image of going out and cutting trees or something. It's really, it's working with communities and stakeholders on all levels, from local to global. And quite important, as we also said, is all inclusive, be part of climate change solutions. Promote the sustainable use of nature-based products. I think this is also quite important, because part of the forest sector, a big part of the forest sector, is the production of these nature-based products, use of forest products as a natural resource, and create more resilient environments. That also links up a lot, I think, to forest landscape restoration, if we look at it, and also to urban forestry. Then support green economies. That's a big issue, and be part of a high impact sector. And I think for those who want to work more on the scientific or research side, practice research and natural sciences, and learn more about how forests work and how to keep them healthy, what's needed to really get the scientific facts and the sound basis for decision making. And could you scroll down maybe to number 10? I can read out number 10. Thank you. So it looks like the coolest of all, but it ended in number 10, use high-tech machinery and tools in the forest and industry. So thank you everyone actually for having participated in this exercise. This is really useful, and it helps a lot to also see where communication and communication campaigns could or should go, always taking into account the context we're talking about. So I think we're heading towards the end of the session almost. But maybe if we look at this result, Is there anyone who would like to give a final comment or say something about it? Do you have any ideas, or do you agree with this ranking? Maybe the panelists, I think maybe Yadira, I don't want to put you in the spot, but you did not have a chance for another question so far.
No, thank you. I just was watching through all of these comments and questions, and as my own experience, and as I think Eduardo recalls on the last comment, it was about the ecosystem services. We all find sometimes really hard time to communicate all what it is. And so for me, the whole thing is about to learn as forester, whatever it is our specialization, how to communicate better the importance of what we are doing, how to explain it to simple people, to people like be able to do that. That's our challenge. So I just want to remark that. Thank you.
Thank you, Yadira. Any other final statements before we get any? So no, but we've really been talking extensively about the many reasons why forestry. There are not only 10 reasons, but at least 100. I think going into the forest sector can really be a very cool thing for young people to do. And to round off this session, we would like to show you an instance about a young kid and about ideas what forestry could mean, a job in forestry could mean. So this video depicts in only 1 minute provided by this sector. So would you please like to share, could you please share the video with us?
Monitoring system.
So this has been even less than 1 minute, and we know exactly what a job in the forest sector implies. Is there immediate feedback maybe you'd like to on this video? I think it's really powerful because you have this image, and then the kid comes up to with this conclusion. All this, I can find all this in forestry. So I think, yeah, people are asking to have access to it and share it, but I suppose that will be possible. I'm not sure. Right. So if there are no finals, well, yeah, I just heard that you can have it at a later stage, not now. But please write to us and let us know who wants to have it, or we can see it from the chat. Okay, so now I think it's time for me to thank the panelists again, once for having agreed to joining and speaking in this session, and for their valuable input. This has been very much appreciated indeed. And let me also thank the participants for your interest in the session and for your great contributions to the Slido and the chat. And last but certainly not least, my thanks go to our technical staff, without whom this session would not have been possible. So let's give them a big virtual applause. Especially to Teresa Löffler and to Greta Castelli, and to all of those whose names I do not know, but who have been working behind the scenes to make this session possible. And I do hope that you've enjoyed the session and that you will follow the rest of this conference tomorrow and on Thursday. But for now, let me wish you a nice rest of the day. Thanks again, and thanks. It's been great having you. Thanks. Bye.